Hey guys! 2024 is over. It was such an amazing year for me and I hope it was for you guys as well. And now that we are into 2025, I wanted to share with you guys my favorite things from 2024. We're covering books, TV shows, movies, cosmetics, and so on. So without further ado, let us get straight into it. Starting with TV shows. None of these are new, but they were my biggest watches this year. So number one, in no particular order, we have Lupin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I discovered it this fall because I decided last year that I really wanted to learn French and take it more seriously and actually try to learn the language properly so that I could one day become fluent in it. So I downloaded Babbel and then I also decided, hey, why don't I watch some TV shows in French? My first idea was to watch Friends but dubbed in French because I know that show so well that I was like, if I watch it dubbed in French, then that's going to be a really easy way to kind of immerse myself in the language and pick up on what these words mean and understand the language better when I hear it. But then I decided, okay, let's use this opportunity to also watch a new show. And so I just Googled best shows in French and that's when I came across this one. Now it's spelled Lupin, like Remus Lupin from Harry Potter, but in the show they always pronounce it Lupin. It's a bit of a Sherlock Holmesy vibe, like he's actually a criminal, but he always evades the police and escapes from detectives, and he's like really smart, really sneaky and creative, and I just loved it. Not only is it good for a little bit of language immersion, but all in all, it's also just a really good show and it was so much fun to watch. Second show is Yellowstone. I was super late to the game with this, but YouTube Shorts started pushing little clips from Yellowstone onto my feed, and at some point I was like, maybe I'll just give this show a try because I googled it, it had really good reviews, and even though it's already been out for 5 years or something, I finally only decided to start watching it last year. Loved it as well. It's definitely very serious and stressful, and I was talking to a friend of mine about it and she said what she really liked about the show is that there's such satisfying vengeance and comeuppance in it. So many stories or plot lines where everyone's kind of following the letter of the law. Justice doesn't really get served because the law, you know, blocks that from happening sometimes. And sometimes the characters on Yellowstone, they just take it into their own hands and deal with the issue their own way, which again, wrong, but satisfying. The third show that I was loving this year, which I actually only started watching in October, I think, but I absolutely binge watched it, and that is The Mentalist. If any of you guys have ever seen The Mentalist, let me know. All of the people who I told last year that I started watching it and was really enjoying it, they were like, hasn't that been out for ages? Like, didn't that show air a million years ago? And I was like, yes. But the exact same thing that happened with Yellowstone happened with The Mentalist. YouTube Shorts all of a sudden started pushing little clips of Jane and Lisbon onto my Shorts feed. And the more I saw, the more I enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, before I see the entire show just in the form of YouTube Shorts, let me actually watch it. And it's also so good. Basically, it's about this guy, Patrick Jane. He's a consultant with the police, basically. Because he's so good at reading people, he became a career psychic, essentially. And some bad stuff happens to him that makes him kind of change his ways. And then he ends up becoming a consultant for the police and he helps them solve crimes. Also really enjoy that. And actually, I really want to know, if you have watched The Mentalist, let me know who your favorite character is. Because for me, it's Cho. And I think for most people, it's going to be Cho as well. Like, he's just, I love him so much. Last two shows on my list for favorites last year, and these shows are even older than the three that I have just mentioned. And the first one is Frasier, which is one of my biggest comfort shows. I started watching Frasier a couple of years ago with my boyfriend because he was a big fan. And also, if you guys have ever seen videos from Binging with Babish, he, especially in his early videos, he mentions Frasier a lot and how much of a big fan he is, but I had never seen it back then. So when I started watching it a couple of years ago, I was like, this show is so good, it's so funny, and even though it's really old, I think it's still a great watch even today. And the last show on my list, which was one of my favorites for last year, and anybody who knows me who was watching this is not going to surprise them at all, it was Friends. My ultimate comfort show. I have been watching that show since I was 15, 16 years old. I have all the lines memorized, and since I've seen it so many times over the years, you know, like I'll just watch through the whole thing until the season finale and then immediately start it again from season 1, episode 1. Sometimes I go through little lulls where I watch other things instead and I take like a little break from watching Friends, but then eventually I always come back to it. Last year, especially being on exchange for 6 months, there were times where I felt a little homesick, and Friends got a lot of watch time for me last year. Okay, moving on to books that I was loving last year. The first book on my list is called How to Age Disgracefully from Claire Pooley. So cute. It's basically one of those plots where you have a handful of people who have absolutely nothing in common, but then, you know, by certain circumstances, their fates and their lives get thrown together and their stories get intertwined, and by the end of it, you know, they're all good friends and everything works out. I hope that didn't spoil too much of it for you, but it is such a sweet book. I really, really enjoyed it. And I bought it because I saw the cover of it. It's like this old granny lady on the front, and I can't remember what she's doing, but that and also the little summary blurb on the back really piqued my interest, and I think it was such a good read. She has another book called Authenticity Project and another one called The People on Platform 5. I immediately read those right afterwards and I also love them, but How to Age Disgracefully is still my favorite one. The next book on the list is more of a business book. It's called The Motive and it's by Patrick Lencioni. I read this book because I saw a clip of Alex Hormozy saying that he read it because his wife Layla read it and she said to him multiple times like, oh, he has to read it because it's such a good book. It basically talks about leadership and what it takes to be a good leader in any aspect of your life and things that you should really consider that you may not have previously considered if you want to be a leader in any capacity. If you are entrepreneurial or quite ambitious and you say, you know, like, I want to be a team leader, I want to be a VP, I want to be a CEO one day, this is a good book to read because it also calls into question why you want to be in that position. Next book on the list is Down Under by Bill Bryson. This was just a really fun read. So Bill Bryson has some travels in Australia. If you've ever read anything from him before, he has a really engaging and just enjoyable writing style. I've read one book from him previously called A Short History of Everything, which I can actually see from here on my bookshelf. And Down Under was just about his times in Australia. The second to last book on my list is called Alchemy. This is by Rory Sutherland, and you may have seen clips of him as well talking about things like consumer psychology, and he has a really great speaking voice, which is why I got the audiobook version on Audible, because he narrates it himself and he is just such a treat to listen to. And the very last book on my list, and the only one that I have as a physical copy, is this one. This book is called The Man Who Died Twice by Richard Osman. It is part of a series called The Thursday Murder Club, and I believe this is actually the second book in the series, but it's the one that my partner had and he put on my nightstand and left it there because he was insistent that I would enjoy it. And finally I picked it up and I started reading it. 2 pages in I stopped reading it because it's written in present tense. And if you have a think about all the other fiction books that you have, I guarantee 99% of them are written in past tense. The Bell Jar, it sounded true, past tense. The Dalai Lama's cat, I raised my head from where I was dozing, past tense. Santa Montefiore, The Secret Hours, my dear Miss Deverell, she repeated happily, past tense. This book, Ibrahim Can't Sleep. The air around him is still. I've seen liberties taken, says Ron. Ron, don't pace over the bloodstains, please, says Elizabeth. Present tense. So I immediately stopped reading it and then didn't pick it up again for another 2 weeks because it bothered me so much. But once I got past that, because it's actually fine, I enjoyed it so much. So now I have all 4 books in the series. The first one is called The Thursday Murder Club. Actually, let me read the back of it for you because it's so cute. 4 unlikely friends, a shocking murder. Welcome to the Thursday Murder Club. In a peaceful retirement village, 4 unlikely friends meet up once a week to investigate unsolved murders. But when a brutal killing takes place on their very doorstep, the Thursday Murder Club find themselves in the middle of their first live case. Elizabeth, Joyce, Ibrahim, and Ron might be pushing 80, but they still have a few tricks up their sleeves. Can our unorthodox but brilliant gang catch the killer before it's too late? It's so adorable. So that's basically the premise of it. It essentially falls under the theme of a cozy murder mystery, and I really like it, and I can't wait to read the other 3 books in the series as well. Okay, the next category that we have is the category of tech. So there were 5 things on this list that I really, really loved. The first one is my, what is it even called? I think it's called Split Ergo keyboard. It is this keyboard right here. It's like a little bit of a wave. The keyboard is also split up. It's supposed to give your hands a more natural position when you type. So instead of typing like this, you type a little bit more like this. And also what I super love about this, you can pair it with up to 3 devices. It has these 3 buttons here, 1, 2, 3. And you basically just press which device you want it to be connected to, which is so helpful. And it also means that you don't need to detach and reattach this little USB dongle with it because it all just works via Bluetooth, which I find so good. Next 2 things on the list I actually don't have with me because I forgot them like a fool. But they are the Logitech Lift Pink. It's an ergonomic mouse, so it's also slightly slanted, so instead of holding your mouse like this, you can hold it like this. When it looked like I was going to be doing a lot more writing for my job, I was like, okay, let me have a look around and see what ergonomic office options there are. And I did notice that whenever I was typing for a long time with the previous keyboard that I had, it did feel like my hands started to get a little numb sometimes, which was a bit weird. So I thought, okay, okay, maybe it's worth it to get an ergonomic keyboard and then also an ergonomic mouse. That's the reason I got those two things at the exact same time. The mouse also has the same feature as the keyboard in that it's Bluetooth connected with your devices, and it also connects to up to 3 devices. And there's a little button on the bottom where you can also just cycle through which device you want to be using. And it makes it so easy for me to switch between my work laptop and my personal laptop. Which leads me on to the next thing, the MacBook Pro 14-inch with an M3 Pro chip. Even though it came to me quite late in the year, it still is on my list of 2024 favorites because it absolutely changed the whole game for me when it came to editing and kind of just workflow generally. The work laptop that I have is a Dell XPS 15, so it's already really small. It is a little bit wider than the MacBook Pro 14-inch, but still the difference between working from a cafe or working on a train or something with this XPS 15 versus the MacBook Pro 14. For some reason, I just enjoy it so much more on the MacBook. Add to that, I used to edit on Premiere Pro, which is from Adobe, which I used to do on my XPS 15. And it started to really bother me that Premiere Pro is a subscription model and there's no option to go with a one-time purchase. After a couple of years, you've already spent hundreds of euros or dollars and you still don't own any of the software. So switching over to a MacBook Pro and now editing on Final Cut Pro instead of Premiere Pro has also made such a difference for me. I also find Final Cut Pro much easier, much more intuitive, and it just makes the whole process so much less daunting. And that was my biggest blocker when I was editing videos before. So it's made the whole thing so much easier for me and made a huge difference. The next thing on the tech list is something that I mentioned in my previous video, and that is my Nutribullet. When I was doing my exchange semester in Australia and I just didn't have the time or the energy to make something healthy, but I didn't want to go out and have like my 5th steak and cracked pepper pie of the week, this really came in handy with keeping me fed and somewhat healthy. Last thing on my list of tech stuff, it's not really tech, but I don't have an other section. It's not really tech, I mean...
okay, there is technology behind it.
This is the YETI Lowball Rambler. There is no handle, which I really like because it's easier than to stick in the side pocket of my backpack. And the reason that I love this thing so much is just because of how amazing it is at keeping hot drinks hot. The staying power of heat in this is incredible because during my exchange semester, in case I haven't mentioned it 50,000 times already, my friend and I spent a lot of time at the library studying, working, writing our master's thesis. And there were a couple of coffee shops on campus as well, but of course, if you have multiple coffees a day, multiple days in a week, it really adds up financially. So what we would do, we would bring this mug because actually me and 5 other friends of mine, we all bought the same mug, just in different colors and different designs. But anyway, while we were there, we would bring this to the library with us, and then we would also bring about 5 or 6 tea bag packets. Honestly, we drank so much tea during that semester. We must have saved so much money on takeaway teas and coffees. Okay, so that is everything for the tech section of my 2024 favorites. Next section, this is gonna be super quick. This is the section for dishes. It's literally just 2 things that I consumed all the time last year, and that was number 1, smoothies. And it saved me so much time. I definitely could have put a little bit more effort into them to make them more delicious because 1 or 2 times I would have a smoothie where I thought to myself, this isn't the best and I still have to drink this entire thing. And the second thing that I absolutely loved having last year was quesadillas. This became my go-to meal prep thing because you can stuff it with everything that's good for you. You can put so many vegetables in it, meat, jalapenos, corn, whatever. And then when you add a bunch of cheese on top, it's delicious as well. And then you can freeze a bunch of it as well. It reheats really well. It still tastes good even if it's lukewarm. Moving on to the last section, which is toiletries. There are only 4 things on this list, but I also absolutely love them. The first thing on the list is this. This is the liquid eyeliner from Rare Beauty. First time I tried it, I absolutely fell in love with it, and I have already repurchased this once. I'm going to repurchase it again, and I am never going to buy another liquid eyeliner as long as Rare Beauty keeps making this. Second thing is this. This is a blush that I use from Nudestix. I think this is technically a bronzer because it has enough brown in it that they've put it in the bronzer section. This is in the shade Beach Babe. It's the Nudies Matte All Over Face bronze color. And shout out to the guy in Sephora who recommended the shade to me because I think without his advice, I wouldn't have gone for it. And it is actually the perfect shade for my skin tone. It blends out really, really nicely and has quite good staying power as well. Next thing on the list is this little travel perfume that I got on a whim. It's from Maison Margiela, and they do these replica perfumes, reproduction of familiar scents and moments of varying locations and periods. So it's called by the Fireplace, and just to warn you, this might not be for everyone because it is, the thing that I love about it is that it smells quite smoky, but it's also quite sweet. I really like it, but it's a heavy, thick nighttime scent. Like if you go to a cocktail bar that has leather seats and you are drinking an old fashioned. It's not a light, fresh summertime scent. I think it smells absolutely stunning. The very last thing that I wanted to mention is this Physicians Formula Diamond Plumper Mineral Wear Lip Plumper. And this one specifically is in the shade Champagne Cushion Cut. Now, if you are looking for something to actually plump your lips, this is not for you. This will not plump anything. As a lip gloss, I think it is fantastic. To me, it smells a bit like minty vanilla. And so I think the smell, the formula, the color, I think all of that is really good. It's just not gonna plump your lips. So guys, that was everything that I was absolutely loving in the year of 2024. Please let me know if there is anything on this list that you have tried, if you agree, if you disagree, if there is anything that you were loving last year that you think needs a little mention, a shout out, then please put it in the comments. I really wanna read what everybody loved last year. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. If you have made it this far, I extra really, really appreciate it. And I hope to catch you all in the next one. Bye.